Hello, I'm Wiley Cubic. This is my Excel walkthrough for homework video 2. I will be completing chapter 12, problem 4. To start, I have taken the liberty of copying over the problem into Excel to make working easier. I'll also show you my tabs. Here's our current workbook, the Zoom, which I'm using to record. I do have a second monitor, so I will drag, that's different. I will drag that window over. I'm currently displaying the textbook so that I have a frame of reference if I need to look over for any values or relating to the questions. All right, to begin, let's start by reading the question. Chicago Turkey is considering a new turkey farm to service its Western region stores. The stores currently require 650,000 turkeys per year, and they are purchased from various local turkey vendors at an average price of $8 per bird. The managers believe the new farm would lower this cost to $7 while maintaining an average sell price of $12. However, due to its location, shipping expense will increase to $1.25 as opposed to the $1 it was prior. The firm will need to increase its inventory of live turkeys by $45,000. It will cost $200,000 to purchase the land, $350,000 to construct the buildings and purchase equipment. In addition, labor expenses will rise by $250,000 per year. The building and equipment will depreciate using the straight line method over 5 years to a salvage value of $100,000. After 5 years, the company will sell the farm for $300,000, 100 from the building and equipment, 200 from the land. The firm has a marginal tax rate of 25%. Land is not depreciable. All right, let's start in a new sheet by bringing in all of our data. We'll start by making containers for everything, starting with cash. This will include our turkeys per year, our cost per bird, the shipping expense, as well as the sell price per bird. And we will also include our additional expenses of labor, as this will come back later in this module. Our next bin I'll call PP&E, which will represent the cost of PP&E, which is going to represent the cost of the land and the buildings and equipment. Cost of PP&E will be the buildings and equipment for this. Cost of land. We're also going to add the salvage value for each as well. And then we're going to move into our depreciation method. Lifetime of 5 years. Salvage value that is equal to the salvage value of our PP&E, as land does not depreciate. And then below this, we can add in our rates. We're given a tax rate as well as a weighted average cost of capital, which will be used to calculate values in part B. Now let's clean this up a bit. Bold. Bold italicize, and then label off our containers, italicize, thin border. All right, turkeys per year. Starting with the old business, we're given 650. And then we're gonna have our old plus an additional 45,000. Good practice is not to hard code that, but we are representing our initial data. Cost per bird is down $7 from 8. Shipping expense of 125 from 1. Price per bird is going to remain the same for each. A labor expense of 250,000. Cost of PP&E, that's the cost of our building and equipment, 250. Cost of land, 200. Salvage value of the building, 100. Salvage value of the land is the 200. Now, our depreciation has straight line method, lifetime of 5, salvage value equal to our salvage value of PP&E. For this, we can find our cost would be 10. So 2, giving us an annual depreciation of $50,000 a year. Tax rate 25%. Weighted average cost of capital is 12%. Make sure our numbers are all formatted correctly. Currency, we're not going to need decimal points at the current moment. All right, there's our data. Let's take in part A. Lower our font a little here. Write out what do we need to calculate the initial outlay, after-tax cash flows, and terminal cash flows for the project. Okay. Our initial outlay is going to equal the sum of what it costs to begin the project, which is purchasing the land, buildings, and equipment. We're also going to need to add the addition to net working capital. And in that case, it is the 45,000 addition to inventory. So we will take that value. Make sure it's typed correctly. And also make sure that is negative, as this is the cash going out of the business to set up this new location. For our after-tax cash flows, we are going to need to add a section that calculates the incremental increase of revenue from the old business to the new business. Hopefully, you can make this nice and easy. Drop this down one. A5. Copy that in. You can get our new 7 some get our incremental increase, which is going to equal F8 minus G8. And then our revenue, which is going to equal the inventory from the prior project multiplied by the increase to revenue from the new project. And now clean up our data, as this does not look good. You guys italicized on thin border. Border thicker, font bold italicize. Thin bottom. Line out our numbers so we can see everything. Center this across. All right. Now, my life easier and format this as well. So, after-tax cash flows will be the revenue that we just calculated. Was of 10. Subtract any other cash expenditures. In this case, that is our labor expense. And we also subtract the annual depreciation. Multiply that by 1 minus the tax rate. Add back depreciation. Terminal cash flows are going to be equal to the sum of the salvage value, or the money that we'll get back at the end of the project, plus additions to net working capital. So again, there's our terminal cash flow, and that is the part A complete. You can grab part B, paste that in. Doesn't need to be that large. In this, we need to calculate the payback period, discounted payback period, NPV, PI, IRR, and MIR using a weighted average cost of capital of 12%. So write everything in. That's our column here. Payback period is going to equal our initial outlay back to positive divided by the annual cash flows. Nope. I want to select you, fix your formatting. Formatting number. Discounted payback period. For this, we are going to need to make a cash flow table, then find the discounted cash flows. Easier to write out. Period. Can do this by using a series fill, though only 6 points in that index, which will allow that and get away with it. For this, write the formula correctly. For this, we are going to have our cash flows in time 0 equal our initial outlay. And then in each subsequent year, they are going to equal our after-tax cash flows, except the last year, which we will also add the terminal cash flows. Now we need to find the discounted cash flows. So take your cash flow divided by 1 plus the weighted average cost of capital to the power of period. Make sure you write the formula correctly when you're going to copy them. And from here, we're going to use a cumulative sum column to represent the running total of our discounted cash flows. So we'll start in year 0, sum of these two, and then from now on, we will take the sum of the point in the cumulative column added by the current period DCF. Multiplying where that index force equals 0. We can see that our discounted payback period will be somewhere in year 4. But first, we need to find where that index equals 0. We can do this with a match function. We want to look up when the value is true in this table array, when it is above or equal to 0, exact match. We can use that to find our discounted payback period by taking this index, minusing 1, add it to the absolute value of by the formatting here, as it is just a number. And there we go. Our discounted payback period is equal to 4.05 years. Now for NPV, easy NPV function, rate of weighted average cost of capital. Over here, take our positive cash flows, add back our initial cash flows. We'll fix formatting on that in a second. For this, we will also use NPV, positive cash flows, divided by the positive of our initial outlay. IRR has its own function, nice and easy. And MIRR also has its own function, nice and easy. Let's fix this up a bit, as this has way too many decimal points. Bring you down to 2. And bring this one also down to 2. Add a couple decimal points for here, just so we can see some more. And then clean up this table. Italicize, border down, alignment, center. All right. Make this a little easier to read. Copy you guys. And fix our column headings so we can actually see everything here. And with that, we have completed part B, payback period, discounted payback period, NPV, PI, IRR, and MIRR. Moving into question C, bring this over, reduce our size, and then mess everything up as we make this nice and easy to read. Part C, management is uncertain about several of the variables in your analysis, and I've asked you to provide 3 different scenarios. So, since they want scenarios, we know that we are going to be using what if scenario analysis. But before we do that, we need to label some of our cells so that when we view the data, it is much easier to read, as there are names and not just B2, B30. So let's do that. We can see that our inputs for each scenario are labor expenses, salvage value of buildings, salvage value of land. Let's first rename labor expenses to labor EXP. And go down to salvage value of PP&E and rename this to salvage value buildings. Make sure it's spelled correctly. And then value land. So now we have renamed our cells that we are going to use for input. We need to rename the cells that we are going to use as our outputs. For this, it is this section down here and go through and name everything. Um, Come on. All right, now that everything has been renamed, we can now enter our scenario manager and add our scenarios. First scenario is best case. We want to change cells, preferably in this order to allow reading the table to be easier. Labor expense, salvage value buildings, and salvage value land. So for labor expense, buildings, then land. And our values for this are going to be 2, as follows. That was not correct. Edit. Yep, one too many. Add expected case. Case. Our values are currently the expected case, so we don't need to change anything. Then add worst case. Now that we have all of our scenarios in, we can just flip through them here, show, and everything will update. Nice and easy. But to view this data better in a way that we can read it easier to analyze, we'll click Summary. And this will allow us to choose which cells we would like to output in. Currently, we're outputting our payback and our cash flows, but we want to change this to represent these cells. You can hide this column as it's our current ones. Now we are able to see a scenario summary that shows us our outputs for each of the scenarios that management wanted to look at. Please note the discounted payback period here is NA, as it is over, the period is longer than the life of the project. To demonstrate this, we can come over here, go back to our scenario manager, look at worst case, show. We return a NA as we still haven't, our cumulative sum has not become positive yet, meaning that our time period is further out than 5 years, and at the end of the 5-year project, they're selling it off. Go back to expected. Perfect. And that brings us to the end of question 4. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Option. Oh, wrong button.